Hello Nigeria, please lend us a few minutes and let us just sit down and quickly deal with a matter of national importance. As a first word, I want to mention to those of you who are fixating on the double forefinger campaign signal of President Muhammad Buhari that they are really ignoramuses who have no clue as to what we are dealing with in Nigeria. Please be patient and listen to me. These are very silly interpreters of the Taqiyya who know nothing about the ascent of the four main schools of Islamic jurisprudence. Blind guides straining at gnats while swallowing camels. The greatest challenge that I have always encountered in the field of terrorism in Nigeria are the emergency experts that keep majoring on the minors while missing the point completely. The forces threatening our sovereignty could not care less whether it was Buhari or Atiku that is the president of Nigeria. In my opinion, Nigeria is just about 40 days away. I speak figuratively. We're just about 40 days away from Armageddon, and there is a possibility that we shall be annihilated simply because we misdiagnosed a global threat as a local problem, and we lack the sense to realize that we are dealing with arcane intelligences that have destroyed many nations from within because their people were too gullible to see beyond their political ambitions. Let me state clearly that all the old emirate structures will be destroyed and replaced with new ones if the hidden enemy is successful. All the moles and collaborators will be killed in turn, and everything from our skin color to our languages will be deleted eventually because we could not tell the difference between a religious problem and a satanic supremacist virus that is wearing a religious disguise. Now, this would be a shame because we are the major nation that has what it takes to destroy this menace with casual ease. One of the greatest lessons we learn from history is that men never learn from history. In one breath, men will say that it is insanity to repeat the same exercise continuously and expect a different result each time. Yet the same man would proceed to reenact the same failures dictated by the force of habit in the hope of success every time. Men we can excuse, but nations that keep running around in circles without learning from history are another matter. Nigeria, despite all its challenges, has been branded as the happiest nation in the world, and it is difficult for me to judge whether this is a compliment or an insult. Listen. It is on record that Obafemi Awolowo, the sage of the West, in 1968 did say that, and I quote, "It is incontestable that the British not only made Nigeria, but also handed it to us whole on their surrender of power. But the Nigeria which they handed over to us," listen to this, "had in it the forces of its own disintegration. It is up to contemporary Nigerian leaders to neutralize these forces, preserve the Nigerian inheritance, and make all our people free, forward-looking, and prosperous." End of quote. Look, in this precise statement, the wise man identified a core problem in the makeup of our nation, and he outlined three issues that needed to be addressed. The first of which was the neutralization of the forces of its own disintegration. Now, there is actually no proof that any of these things were resolved. And we have a situation today where almost 200 million people wake up every morning in the world's largest black nation to defy gravity every day. If indeed Nigeria is meant to be the champion nation of Africa, could this be one of the reasons why black people are derided as backward, stupid, and dumb all over the world? Historical records reveal that an extremely wicked king in Israel called Ahab saw disasters ahead and negotiated a stay of action so that his children would inherit the disasters after his demise. The average leader in Nigeria seems to have that spirit of Ahab, so long as the evil day is transferred to the time of his children. For the avoidance of doubt, let us examine one of the forces of disintegration that we have inherited, and has not been addressed till date, and only then will you understand why we cannot stop the Boko Haram or the Fulani headsman narrative. Bishop Togwell led a team from Lagos on the 22nd of January in the year 1900 on a missionary expedition to Kano. Reverend J.C. Dudley Ryder, Reverend A.E. Richardson, and Dr. W.R.S. Miller, plus one J.R. Boggin, a lay missionary, were a part of that optimistic group. Let me skip all the hardship, mishaps, and troubles en route that the team experienced and recorded, and begin to talk about how many communities were afraid to receive them the nearer they got to Kano. Bishop Togwell did not pay attention to the fact that the British government had just taken over all the assets of the Royal Niger Company on the 1st of January 1900, beating France and Germany in the scramble for this juicy portion of Africa. This meant that the great emirates of the Fulani Empire had been absorbed under the British protectorate of the northern Nigeria. Just as Togwell was entering their territory, which at that time used to be regarded as the Sudan, the Queen had just informed the emirs that they were no longer in charge. Unknown to Togwell, the West African Frontier Force, WAFF, the father of the Nigerian Army, and its armed patrols under Frederick Lugard had also taken up a position in Kaduna, so that the emirs were all jittery, thinking that these two different teams of Europeans were connected in one single purpose. On the 6th of April, the year 1900, Togwell's team was cautiously hosted by the Emir of Zazzau, a kindly and polished but notorious slave dealer. They enjoyed his hospitality, but then they turned down his offer to set up camp in his domain. As they departed, he warned them that the Emir of Kano would be unfriendly. He said, "The Kano people think much of themselves, and their emirs put on airs." But Togwell, Bishop Togwell, would not be deterred. The news of this unarmed band of white men had spread, and the Emir of Kano actually had sent his emissaries to warn them to turn back and not come to Kano. But the message could not be delivered because the two teams missed each other because they followed different routes. Hostilities were increasing as this team neared Kano, and a lot of the chiefs in the towns pretended illness to avoid meeting with Bishop Togwell. Finally, on the 19th of April, year 1900, Bishop Togwell and his team sighted the great red mud walls of Kano City and rejoiced greatly, singing songs unto the Lord. Now, escorted by the cavalry, the Kano cavalry, the Emir's cavalry, they soaked in the splendor of Kano and its magnificent edifices and the markets. But they were sternly instructed on etiquette and palace protocols, and they were made to wait for hours before being granted audience by the Emir. Resplendent in black silk, Fulani attire, the Emir of Kano was saluted with roars of Zaki, Zaki by his subjects and slaves. It was a brief and hostile meeting, as the Emir just wanted to know whether they were soldiers or traders. Once it was established that they were religious teachers, his face became contorted with fury, and he salamed them after a brief exchange. When the Emir salams you, it means you cannot remain in Kano any longer. No amount of British diplomacy would pacify him, and he charged them for blasphemy during the conversation for daring to say that they were messengers of God. When they entreated him that they had doctors who were willing to do free medicals, he simply laughed them to scorn. He accused them of entering his kingdom without permission and would not guarantee their safety if they lingered beyond their welcome. He even directed them to Sokoto, to the Sultan of Sokoto, to go and seek permission from, quote, the king of Muslims, before entertaining the thought of even returning to his territory. Emir Aliyu which was his name, was very suspicious of the white man. And the recent events, of the Royal Niger Company and the Queen had even made him much more paranoid. So the team was given 3 days to exit Kano or face his wrath. That is how the door of religious tolerance was shut. And matters became more complicated later on when the British colonial forces, led by Lugard, installed the indirect rule system and gave a guarantee to the emirs that there will be no proselytization in northern Nigeria. So you see, the religious enmity between north and south, or what was going to be joined as Nigeria, was already cast in iron even before Nigeria was formed, despite the fact that there were large swaths of the northern territory where religious tolerance would have been welcome. The British colonial heritage intensified the religious divisions between north and south for its own purpose, and they remotely influenced the northernization agenda that prompted the Premier of Northern Nigeria, Ahmadu Bello, to grant that infamous hate speech interview against the Igbos to a British journalist in the wake of Nigerian independence. Since then till date, no truthful Nigerian leader will deny the thinly veiled religious hatred ever simmering below the surface. The religious enmity is actually being passed from generation to generation and has become a part of the national narrative of Nigeria. I recall what happened in Gombe, was that 2007, 2008? When junior secondary school students slaughtered their teacher, Christiana Oluwashese, and attempted to murder her baby. I want to say categorically that even the state governor did everything to cover up for these children, and that case was never really heard in court till today. Hear me, some of those young murderers will become political leaders tomorrow, and their blood-stained fingers will even find greater expression. You see, many child killers are being trained in some sections of this country, and they're being fed on oral history that justifies religious hate crimes. The entire thing has now become a charade with all sorts of religious bodies set up for fruitless dialogue exercises, while the core issues raised by Obafemi Awolowo remain unaddressed. Remember that the demonization of southern Nigeria on the platform of religion was a part of the northern inheritance, and all you have to do is to whip up religious sentiments to date and all reason is gone. This unaddressed religious force of disintegration is a part of every institution in Nigeria, and that includes the army and the intelligence circles. It is a strong factor in demotion and promotions, but nobody will talk about it openly. It has even been known to affect the selections in our national football team. Now that Islamism, terrorism, global terrorism has entered the picture with its deadly operations, Nigeria is doomed, because that global threat is now taking advantage of the unaddressed Christian versus Muslim flaw that is in the foundation of our nation. Islamist, and I did not say Muslim, Islamist terrorists are busy killing Muslims who refuse to comply to their supremacist creed. And the Christian leaders are even making matters worse, because they are promoting hatred in the ranks instead of blowing the religious cover so that there can be a united front across the religions. The national political leadership is actually made up of many beneficiaries of that religious demonization and the divide and rule policy of the colonial days. So, instead of speaking up to defend the unity of Nigeria, many of them are sympathizers, some are Islamist moles, and the majority of them don't even understand that this new threat will create a totally new emirate structure to replace the old Sokoto arrangements. Today, self-centered demagogues are also having a field day, and it is clear that Nigeria will not survive the combined forces of the Boko Haram, the Fulani herdsman narrative, and even the next disguise of that global supremacist hydra when they resume hostilities in full, not many days from now. It is a matter of time. If we cannot resolve the religious divide embedded in our foundation, Nigeria has no hope. I did say it was a matter of time all along, because there is a maxim, a principle that establishes the fact that two can never walk together except they be agreed. And actually it is folly to try to break such principles. Perhaps we should quit trying to defeat gravity every day and get the boldness to address the issues that will guarantee our survival, because things are different this time around. If we don't hate the destiny of our children, we need to accept that this new enemy is a very intelligent, shape-shifting, highly organized, patient, merciless, modern, and unrelenting global supremacist hydra with a war machinery that wears a religious disguise. That's why I'm pleading that this 204 fingers nonsense that is occupying the minds of many, I tell us that this is the least of our problems, and it is actually nothing but a political distraction that is sweet to the ears of those who are not schooled in counter-terrorism. Look, Nigeria is bleeding profusely, so please let's get serious while the time window remaining is still open. I won't even commend that the only church leader that in recent times seems to have grasped the enormity of the challenges ahead. I heard that he called for a unity or an accord of the two major political parties to come together to address crucial issues and not allow the elections to become a distraction, but to do elections afterwards. But frankly speaking, I think that the pompous fellow messed everything up when he began to call for a comical submission to his own person, instead of majoring on the importance of the coming together so that we can ensure that there will be a Nigeria for our children to inherit. So please help me. Listen to this all through, ruminate on it, cross-check whether it be true, and please pass it on. Pass it on to anybody who knows that we need to build bridges if Nigeria will survive to see tomorrow. God bless you all.